In this video, I'll be printing off my biggest miniature yet. And this was quite a challenge to get assembled. So basically, I've grabbed this massive beastie. I don't even know what it is, some kind of like dinosaur with a small but pretty large dinosaur riding him as well. A whole bunch of scenery as well to go with it, and then also some guards and some enemy units. All of these minis are from the latest set by STLflix, the Siege of Ravenhold, and STLflix very kindly sponsored this absolutely mad project. So let's kick it off and go through the process and get to the end result, which led to me pulling out the remains of my precious hair. So first up, I grabbed all the different files, got them all downloaded, sorted them out, and then started throwing them into my slicer. So I started off with the different units. So first up, you've got the hero units. You've then got things like your NPC type units, like your guardsmen and your different knights. And then you've got your enemy units as well, which are these like crocodile people. I really like them. So I got all those printed off first, and then I got them all cleaned up, removed from the supports, then got them all nicely primed. Just gave them all a quick blast of black and then white from above to give it a nice centerful prime before I moved it over to my painting table. Now, whilst I got to painting these, I then moved on to also getting everything else printed off. So there's loads of terrain that comes with this set as well. So you've got all these different parts that come with like a castle. So you've got different walls, you've got the gates, you've got this tower as well, which is modular. So you can build it up, you can have it as tall as you like. You could have multiple towers if you wanted. And then you've got all these different ruin pieces as well. So if you want to have a bit of a battlefield, there's lots of stuff to play with. Now, the good thing about these is they come supported, they come unsupported, they come pre-hollowed as well, so you don't have to worry about using too much material. So for all the terrain stuff, I used my FDM printer because I figured that would free up my resin printers for the mammoth beastie that I needed to tackle. So leaving the terrain pieces to print on my FDM printer, I got to painting and just grabbed a few different speed paints and played around with these minis. I haven't actually used the Metallic Army Painter speed paint too much, but in this one I tried it out and I really like the way this gold came out. For all the knights and everything, I just kind of splashed them all with gold and then just gave them a dry brush of silver, and they're simple but pretty effective. So for all the other units, I just experimented with a few different colors, saw what worked, and then when I got to the end, I was thinking, do I do something with the bases? But because there's going to be a lot of terrain and stuff like that, I wanted the bases to kind of just blend into the background, so I just did them all completely black. I quite like this. I think for an army and bits like that, it's nice having those themed bases and doing a lot more stuff with it, because you can blend in your whole army and they all just fit together nicely. But because these are going to be more like D&D pieces that you can play with, and you can play with the adventure that comes from STLflix, it's just nice to have something that doesn't get in the way. So, you know, if you've got a NPC, for example, or if you've got your hero that goes into a tavern, they don't have a rocky base with loads of grass on it. I know it sounds silly, but it doesn't break immersion. Once they were taken care of, I knew I needed to tackle the big beastie, the dinosaur riding a massive dinosaur. Like I mentioned with the terrain, this also comes either pre-hollowed or you can have it as a whole thing. It comes pre-supported or non-supported, so depending on what you want to do with it, you can go wild. I printed pretty much every piece hollowed, and I got them all onto my printers, and it took a lot of time. As you can imagine, this is a big beastie. It's bigger than a baby, you know, that thing is absolutely huge. So it took a lot of printing, there's a lot of parts to get together, and then once I finally got it printed, one of the big things you've got to worry about if you print stuff off that's hollowed is you've got to make sure the inside is cleaned. If you don't get all of that uncured resin out, over time what happens is, I believe it gives off different gases, and that causes it to expand, and then it'll crack your print, and it will basically destroy it. So you could do the perfect paint job on this, and in a couple of months' time, the resin will cause it to like just explode. And you don't want that on something so big. So a trick I've been using when it comes to actually curing all the bits inside, you could either get like a little UV light that goes in there, but what I've read online, and I'm no scientist, so I'm gonna get all of this wrong, is that if you water cure things, it causes the UV light to refract and hit every single bit that's exposed to the water. So I got this big clear tub and I popped all of my pieces into it. And luckily in the UK right now, we're having a weird heat wave with lots of sunshine. So I filled it up with water and left it in my garden. I made sure every single bit was well and truly submerged and all the water got in there. You also want to make sure before doing this, you give it a thorough cleaning in IPA, or if you're using water washable resin, just make sure you clean it out as best you can to get any of that uncured resin out. So I got it all glued together and I filled in any cracks that were left exposed by the resin where it maybe shrunk a little bit. And then I had to prime him. So I grabbed a couple of rattle cans and gave him a black first, and then white from above to give it a bit of a zenithal, and then it was over to the painting side of this. Now painting this big bad boy up was interesting. First up, I used my airbrush to try and get as much coverage as I possibly could, and then I went back in there to try and do just a little bit more detail work with the brush to pick out some of the things that I wanted to stand out. The rider, for example, and his throne, the bits of flame as well, I wanted them just to stand out a little bit more. and then the head of the absolute big beastie. Everything else could just kind of blend in, didn't need to have too much picked out because it wasn't necessarily going to be the center focus. And we've got this big deck area as well where enemies could go onto that and they could be shooting down. So you're always going to have different areas of focus for this model. Once I'd got all the bits done that I wanted, I just threw an oil wash over there just to blend it all in, and then I left him there. The terrain's a similar thing, but because I had quite a lot of terrain to get through, and I didn't want to mess around with the airbrush and everything like that, I just sprayed all of this black and then white from above as well just to give it that zenithal. And I went back in there with an oil wash, but a really thick oil wash. Now I like working with oils because you don't need to use too much paint. You just grab some oils, mix in the color that you want, and then throw in some white spirit just to mix up to a consistency that you like. If I was doing this as a standard wash, I'd get it a lot thinner because then it runs everywhere. But with this, I got it quite thick and then sloshed it all over, so I got it all gray. If you find anywhere that you want to go back in and take some of it off, just basically get a little makeup sponge or a sponge and wipe it off all the areas you don't want it. If you do that within the first 30 minutes, you don't need to reactivate it. But if you do want to come back later and you find there's areas where it's just too grey, you could go back in and reactivate it with some white spirits and just wipe it off. Went in with some browns as well for things like the doors and added some extra colours into bits of the terrain. And then we have it all done. That's a lot of terrain, an absolute big beastie who took a lot of time assembling and printing. He was fun. And now I have my biggest miniature yet, and he can't be called a miniature because he's bigger than a baby. Honestly, this has been a lot of fun. I really like the knights. They're probably my favorite thing. They're really simple, but really effective. I like them. And there's a lot more to this set as well. So I want to print off a couple more towers because I want them at the end of my castles. And there's also other bits of terrain as well. There's this massive keep that I haven't got around to printing yet, but that's probably going to be next on my list as well. So there's a lot that comes with this one. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's a beastie project. But if you are looking to print off a big piece on a resin printer and you're wondering how do you get in there to cure it if you hollow it out and how do you go about that, hopefully the water trick's going to help you. Hopefully it actually works. It's not failed me yet. I've not had any prints explode on me, and it always feels just there's no tackiness to large prints. And before I was doing the water trick, I always had a little bit of tackiness on a large print when I'd washed it and then cured it normally. So thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. Head on over to my Discord channel as well. We just talk all things miniatures, 3D printing, painting, and all of that stuff. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ra for now. Bye.